this very special shir being sponsored by the Bezalel family. Let's give a round of applause to the Bezalel family for dedicating that shir. It's being dedicated to the Levi Nishmat in loving memory of Faria Bat Sarah, Zichron Racha, and Yamin Ben Chana Elul, Zichron Racha, and Shamot Shalom Aliyah, Amen. It's being presented by the Chazaq organization, of course, Anshe Shalom of Jamaica States, which Baruch Hashem is such a place of constant Torah, Tefillah, Chesed. Baruch Hashem, happy in the community. Let's give a round of applause for the shul, Baruch Hashem. And tonight we're having the great honor to hear from Rabbi Eli Mansour who, Baruch Hashem, so many people, tens of thousands of people, they get inspired by the rabbi every single year, and that's what we hear inspired momentarily from the rabbi. Just on the note of Elul, so something that I've heard from the rabbi before is that he says that one of the loopholes, one of the ways that you can ensure a good judgment at Rosh Hashanah is by being a person, by changing yourself from a person who's an individual to a person who is Tziburi, a person who's involved in the community. And of course, everyone should get involved with the work of Chazaq, which is a leading force of public school outreach with Sunday school and after school programs in over 20 different locations. Baruch Hashem has transferred since 2017 over 1,700 students from public school yeshiva, Baruch Hashem, and as you know, this is the start of the new school year, and everyone who's sitting right here, everyone knows at least one neighbor, co-worker, friend who has a child in public school, and they should reach out to Chazaq. That's one small commitment that everyone can take upon himself that will increase your year with Hashem for you and your families with Hashem. And Chazaq's actually having a very special raffle that you could get involved with more information the whole way after the shir. It's a special 360 raffle. There's only being 360 tickets being sold, anywhere from $1 to $360, and you can have a chance to win $10,000. Everyone should get involved. It's with Hashem, and we're going to call upon Yitzhak and Blue for some opening remarks. Give them a round of applause, please.
חזק וברוך. ערב טוב רבותיי, ברשות כבוד הרב אלי מנצור, שישמרהו וחייהו, ברשות הרב ניאזוב, even though he's not here, הרב ניסניאן, כל אחד לפי מעלו ומכובדו. שיהיו הדברים האלו לנשמת מרת סבתתי, פריה בצרה, וגם דודי היקר, בנימין, בן חנה בלול, רוח השם תנא בגן עדן. We just came out of the parsha, Parshat Ki Tavo, and Chachamim tell us that Ezra Sofer instituted this parsha in order to get rid of all the curses of the previous year and begin this year with brachot. Shneimar tichle shana v'kilelotea, tachel shana u'berchotea. So B'ezrat Hashem, we should hear good news and we should have a bracha shana full of bracha. Also, the beginning of the parsha teaches us thank you, how to say thank you. And I just want to say a quick thank you for a couple people who are very dear to us, and especially to Kavod Arav. First of all, I want to say thank you. We should all learn to say thank you before we start asking on Rosh Hashanah. Say thank you for the previous year, everything that Hashem gave us and gives us, and then we can start asking. I want to say thank you to the president, he does countless work for this Beit Knesset, working around the clock, making it more beautiful, as you can see. I want to thank for the sponsors. I want to thank also Chazaq and the Meir of brothers, Rabbi Yaniv, Rabbi Ilan, which I grew up with them in Beit Knesset, the Chazaq team that they go above and beyond trying to do outreach. And here I want to give a personal thank to Kavod Arav. The first time I heard Rabbi Mansour, it was right over here in this Beit Knesset in 9/11, the year 2001, 23 years ago. I wasn't in this year, but my mom came home with 4 cassettes. We had cassettes back then, believe it or not. And the Rav gave a beautiful shiur, 4 different topics about Rosh Hashanah that I still use today. And ever since these past 23 years, the Rav has been lifting up our nation, our families with inspiration, countless teaching of Torah Sheba'al Peh and Torah Shebechtav that you can find online. And b'zchut Kavod Arav, I was zochet to do my first Yom Masechet with Daily Halacha about 20 years ago. And the countless chidushim, anything in Tanakh, ever I needed to check something in, whether it was the Nevi'im, Megillat Esther, everything is recorded, and it really was a shpia alai to learn the Torah from the Rav and to teach the Torah. And Baruch Hashem, I've been around for 41 years, and this past Tisha B'Av, I learned for the first time that Nebuchadnezzar was the descendant of Shlomo HaMelech. Unbelievable, blew my mind. So Baruch Hashem, the Rav is still strong, and you're inspiring for us, for the family, for the community. I want to bless you, Hashem should bless you to להמשיך להגדיל תורה לדיעה, שהשם ייתן לך אריכות ימים ושנים, וכל מעיינות יפוצו חוצה בעזרת השם, בפרט מעיין אליהו. השם ייתן לך כתיבה וחתימה טובה, שנה טובה וברכת, וכן יהיה רצון ולומר אמן, כי בחר וזכים הרב הדופס, כבוד הרב.
תזכו לשנים רבות, נעימות וטובות. ברוכים הנמצאים בשם השם. I am no stranger to Kahal Kadosh Anshe Shalom here in Jamaica States. At some point in my life, I was coming here at least once a month, and we had a very steady shi'ur, Baruch Hashem. I would come with my good friend Joe Nakash and his wife, and we'd make the trip happily every Sunday night that we came, and we would have a beautiful kahal. And I remember, I have fond memories of this great synagogue and this beautiful kahal. And I'm glad that I was able to come back, Baruch Hashem, l'chaim tovim u'shalom, and that we're able to see the kahal flourishing, b'li ayin hara, mashallah. And Be'ezrat Hashem, I pray that this holy congregation, the Rabbanim, the president, the board, the directors, should continue to lead this congregation forward, of course, beruhniyut u'begashmiyut. And I will wish all the members that are present and not, as my predecessor said, tahil shana u'birchoteha, may the curses of Tafshin Pedalid be behind us. Mikan ul-haba lehushbanat haba. From here on in, we have a new hishbon, and Be'ezrat Hashem will be only positive and optimistic. שהקדוש ברוך הוא יבשר לנו בשורות טובות, ישועות ונחמות, אמן כן יהי רצון. ברשות קהל קדוש. I came tonight to reveal a secret which is hidden in the prayers of Rosh Hashanah. This is a novel idea and definitely worth your attention and worth your time. It begins with a prayer that arguably is the most neglected of all the prayers that we have in the Siddur. And that is for good reason. It's all the way at the end. And most people don't make it to the end. Most people start to take off the tefillin in Ubal Sion, and by the time we get to the end of the tefillah, they're long gone. So it is neglected. And those that make it to the end, they usually say this prayer on the way out. And that, of course, is Alenu L'Shabeach, which has been dubbed Tefillat HaDerech, the prayer that people say when they're traveling. Now, you shouldn't think, because it is so undervalued and underestimated, that it is not important. You must know that the prayer Alenu L'Shabeach was actually written by Yehoshua ben Nun. It's one of the oldest prayers that we have, 3,500 years old. There's not too many things in our Siddur that date all the way back to the times of Yehoshua. It is clear that he wrote it B'ruach HaKodesh, with divine inspiration. So great is this tefillah that the Mishnah Berurah, when he brings down the kavanot of Alenu L'Shabeach, he writes that when one recites this prayer, he should say it be'emah, with fear and trepidation, v'yir'ah. And he says it when it happens, when it's said correctly, HaKadosh Baruch Hu from heaven looks down with pamalya dileh. Pamalya is the familia. Familia means the family. What is the family of heaven? The Malachim. The Malachim look down and they see the Jewish people saying Alenu L'Shabeach, and they turn to God Almighty and they say, Ashrei ha'am shekachalo, Ashrei ha'am she'Adonai Elohav. The Alenu L'Shabeach motivates the angels in order to give us praise in front of the Creator. Furthermore, the Hachamim say that Alenu L'Shabeach is Kodesh Kodashim. It's like the Shir HaShirim. It's holy of holies and one of the greatest praises to the Boreh. Furthermore, there was a great rabbi called Rav Chaim Vital. Chaim Vital was a student of Rabbeinu Ari. Incredible. He says everybody has a wish. They need something. In Hebrew we call that a yeshua. It could be in business, it could be in health, it could be family related. It's a girl that's looking for a shidduch, or maybe a couple that needs issues in fertility, shalom bayit, parnasah, everything. There's always something that you need, the yeshua. And everybody's trying to figure out how to bring down salvation, how to reach success. Chaim Vital said a secret from the master, Rabbeinu Ari. He said, when you say Alenu L'Shabayach, after you finish the first paragraph and you say En Od, you pause. The next paragraph is Al Ken Nekabelach. At that point, you pause and you ponder in your mind and you think of the item that you need, the Yeshua, the salvation, and you meditate for a few moments on that item. And he writes of Chaim Vital, Veze Baduk Umnuseh. Baduk Umnuseh means it is tried and tested, which means it works. That's the value of Alenu L'Shabayach. It is able not only to bring the accolades of the angels, but it's actually to be the impetus and the cause of Kibul Tefillotenu. Now, Alenu L'Shabayach, all year long, finds itself, as I mentioned, at the end of the Tefillah. However, 3 days a year, the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, in the Musaf at least, Alenu L'Shabayach finds itself in the Musaf. Now you have to know the Musaf of Rosh Hashanah is the Tefillah of the year. It's the longest Tefillah. Our minhag is we blow Shofar, not only in the Lahash, but even in the Hazarah. This is the main Tefillah. It's the longest, clearly. Malchuyot, Zichronot, Shofarot. And all of a sudden, in the middle of Malchuyot, here he is, Alenu L'Shabayach appears. And therefore, it's in the center of the center. That means it finds itself in the main tefillah of the year, right at the hub, right at the core of this tefillah. That indicates to me how valuable it is. So therefore, I think it's worth our time tonight to try to explain a few of the words that Yoshua ben Nun wrote. Mainly tonight, I want to understand the words when he said, Shelo asanu kegoye ha'aratzot, velo sam chelkenu kahem, vegoralenu kechol hamonam, shehem mishtachavim lahebel varik, umetpalelim el el lo yoshia. ואנחנו משתחווים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. This is the part of the Alenu L'Shabayach that I would like to explain. One at a time. What does it mean, Shelo asanu kegoyeh ha'aratzot? We're not like the Goyim. I'll tell you how I learned it previously. Every morning we make a beracha. If you're a man, you say Shelo asani goy. If you're a lady, you say Shelo asani goya. If you're undecided, no, I'm just kidding. The point is, every morning we make a beracha, Shelo asani goy. We're very fortunate. The odds are stacked against us that we were born Jewish. The Jewish people are only a small percentage of world population. The fact that we were born Jewish, we have to make a beracha. Shelo asani goy, that we could have been part of the majority, the large majority of the world. We must be grateful, we must be thankful. We're lucky. So I always understood, Shelo asanu kegoyeh ha'aratzot. Yeah, we're not like the Goyim. But why would we have to repeat that? We did that already in the beracha, Shelo asani goy. Must be Shelo asanu kegoyeh ha'aratzot. It's something deeper. So I'd like to explain it. What does it mean we're not like them? They have a certain system and we follow a different system. It's based on something that happened in this week's parasha. We read Kitavo. I don't know if you have the same custom that we have, But the majority of Kitabot, the Hazan, the Baal Koreh reads it in a low murmur. It's because it's filled with the most graphic kelalot. Kelalot that you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy. Very, very, very gory details of what's going to happen to the Jewish people. So graphic that the halakha says read it low because we don't want to scare the congregation. We don't want them to be, Hasbe Shalom, so intimidated they won't come back to Bet Knesset the following week. And nobody wishes to get that aliyah. We usually give it to somebody who doesn't understand what's being read. We tell them it's a good aliyah, just take it. Bezat Hashem, it'll be good for him. Anyway, after the aliyah of the Kilalot, it finishes. It says you'll be sold to your enemies. You'll be sold as slaves and maidservants. And you're going to be so low. Ve'en koneh. Nobody's going to even want to buy you as a slave. It's the lowest madrega. And then it ends. Elle devrei haberit. These are the words of the covenant that God spoke to Moshe, to the Jewish people, in Eretz Moav. And then we get to the next chapter. Perek Chavtet. Vayikra Moshe el kol Yisrael. Strange, he was in front of all Yisrael already. Says the Orahim HaKadosh, no, he called the children and he called the ladies. It seems only the men were there for the first discussion, for the first Kilalot, and then he called everybody else to participate. Vayomer alehem. He tells them, Rabotai, atem reitem את כל אשר עשה אדוני לעיניכם בארץ מצרים לפרעה ולכל עבדיו ולכל ארצו. You saw it. Your parents saw with their own eyes what God did to Paro in Mitzrayim. You heard about Dam, Sephardei Akinim, all the way to Makat Bechorot, to the splitting of the sea. Hamasot HaGedolot, the great wonders. Asher Ha'u Einecha, Ha'otot, Ha'mofetim, HaGedolim. Not only that, but then you came into the Midbar. And the Midbar, the desert, is a very inhospitable place for human beings. A person cannot survive the Midbar for more than 24 hours. The conditions are brutal. It's freezing cold at night. It's boiling hot during the day. There is no hydration. There is no nutrition. It is impossible to live in the Midbar. But you, Jewish people, 40 shana b'Midbar. You didn't survive 24 hours, you survived 40 years, and not only barely. You survived it. Lo balu salmotechem. Your clothes did not wear out. They were freshly pressed every day by the Ananei Kavod. V'na'alcha, your shoes, lo baletan na'alecha ma'al raglecha. They didn't wear out. They didn't tear. They didn't rip. Ananei Kavod gave them a buff and a shine every day. Lechem lo achaltem. You didn't eat bread. You didn't need bread. You had bread from the Shamayim. Hamotzi lechem min hashamayim. You ate the man. V'yayin v'shechar lo shetitem. You didn't need wine. You didn't need beer. You drank the holy waters of Be'er Miriam. My question is, all this is true. We know that. We went out of Mitzrayim miraculously. We know our sojourn in the desert was supernatural. But this is what we know this already. It's clearly documented so many times in the Torah. Why does Moshe Rabbeinu, at this juncture, right after the Kilalot, why does he have to remind them of what happened in Mitzrayim and what happened in the Midbar? What's the reason why the Torah and Moshe decides to review that episode here and now? This is a big question. In order to understand it, I'd like to present a Gemara. The Gemara is in Ketubot. Ketubot, Daf, Samech Vav, Amud Bet. Listen to a Gemara. Tanu Rabbanan, Maaseh Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai was our chief rabbi. Shaya rochev ala hamor, was riding on a donkey. That was the means of travel in the olden days. Vaya yotzeh miYerushalayim, he was leaving Jerusalem. Vayu talmidav mehalchin acharav, and he had an entourage of students that were traveling with him. Ra'a riva achat, he saw a riva. What's a riva? A young lady. שהייתה מלקטת שעורים מבין גללי בהמתן של ערבים. She was a poor woman. She was so desperate. She was looking for barley corns, small pieces of barley. Where was she looking? In the excrement of the animals of the Arabs. The lowest place. She had no options, so she was rummaging by the Arabs. They have the animals, pardon me, but in the dung of the animals. She's sifting through. Maybe the animal ate some barley and it went through his system and came out. If she would find a piece of barley, she would be lucky. A Jewish woman. Rabbi Yohanan sees this. Wow. Would you ever imagine a Jewish girl could be so desperate, could be so needy? So the Rav, he was shocked. Gemara says, incidentally, Kevan שראתה אותו, when she saw the Rav, נתעטפה בשערה. She covered her hair. And even a Jewish woman that reached the lowest level, she still had sini'ut. When she saw the Rav, she put herself together, she covered her head, ועמדה לפניו, and she turns to Rabbi Yohanan, Amra lo Rabbi, my rabbi, parnaseni. Parnaseni means give me parnasa, give me something to eat. Amar la bat mi'at, who are you? Amra lo bat Nakdimon ben Gurion ani. I am the daughter of Nakdimon ben Gurion. Nakdimon ben Gurion was the wealthiest Jew almost that ever lived. I don't know how to explain Nakdimon ben Gurion in our terminologies, what he was in his wealth to the Jewish people. You would call him maybe a Rothschild, on that level of super wealthy. He had so much money he could have supported the Jewish people in its entirety himself. This is the daughter. So the Rab says, Amar lav biti, my daughter, mamon shel bet avicha, hechad halach. Where's all your father's money? The daughter of Nakdimon should be in such a dire straits. Where's all your father's money? She had an answer. It's not for tonight's shiur, but worthy to come back maybe to discuss her answer, because it's a very perceptive. She had a very, very strong understanding of why her father lost the money. It wasn't a bad investment. It wasn't that it got swindled. Says, yeah, he was a very wealthy guy, but he didn't give enough charity. He didn't give according to what he was supposed to give. And as a result, the tzedakah preserves the wealth. You have to give in order to preserve. He didn't give enough, and therefore the money of my father, it's spoiled. And it became deteriorated. And therefore he lost it. Tzedakah, interesting lesson. The greatest insurance policy to hold on to your money is not to put it in a bank that's FDIC insured. That can only guarantee up to $250,000. If a person wants to guarantee his wealth, you have to let some out. Money in Hebrew is called damim. Damim in Hebrew is blood. In the olden days, it was very medicinal to bloodlet. They would let some blood out. Why? Because when you let some blood out, the body regenerates new blood. It's healthy. And you have to let out some of your money, like the blood, in order that the remaining money regenerates and grows. But if you try to hold on to the whole pile, so that God forbid the money gets infected and gets sickly. That's a side point. Although I'm sure the committee is very happy that I mentioned it. He says, I don't believe it. Amra lo, she says to the rabbi, you were at my wedding. I remember when you signed my ketubah. I remember the number you wrote in the ketubah. My father was wealthy and my father-in-law was wealthy. And you wrote in the ketubah 1,000,000 zehuvim, an exorbitant number. It didn't matter how many zeros. Didn't even matter. Nobody flinched. He says, I remember, כשחתמתי על כתובתה, הייתי קורא בה 1,000 דינרי זהב. 1,000, 1,000 thousands. That's 1,000,000. Didnre zahab, gold coins. From her father, besides what she gets from her father-in-law. So it's a $2 million ketubah. Bachar Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai. This episode inspired Rabbi Yochanan to bechiyah, to tears. I understand. And now listen to his reaction. V'amar. He didn't say this to her necessarily. He was talking to his students and he was talking to us. And he makes the following analysis of this episode. Listen to the way the Gadol Hador, when he sees this situation, the way he perceives it and the way he analyzes it, and his comment. Amar, Ashrechem Yisrael. Can you believe it? Those are the last words that would have come out of my mouth. Ashrechem Yisrael. Ashrechem Yisrael means, how fortunate are you, Yisrael? Fortunate. What about this episode is Ashrechem? If anything, we would say, Haval Alechem. Miskenim atem. Poor thing. But Rabbi Yochanan saw in this Ashrechem. He saw something about the Jewish people that makes us lucky and fortunate. What is that? Bisman she'osim resono shel makom. When the Jewish people are obedient and they are fulfilling the will of their Creator, en kol umma velashon sholetet bahem. The Jewish people are impenetrable. We are untouchable. No nation is able to lay a hand on us, a finger on us. Nobody has any dominance over the Jewish people. When the Jewish people are fulfilling the divine order and the divine will, we are no match to any of the nations of the world. It doesn't matter even if we're outnumbered, even if we're out-militaried, even if we're surrounded. The Jewish people, when we fulfill the Torah Shel Makom, it doesn't matter. Nobody has any hold on us. And then he says, "Ubizman she'en osim Rosh Shel Makom." When the Jewish people are in contempt and they are not fulfilling the divine order, Mosran biyad umma shefela. God delivers us into a low nation. God puts us in the hands of lowlifes. Belo biyad umma shefela. Not only in the hands of lowlifes, ela biyad behemtam shel umma shefela. To the animals of the lowlifes. Rabbi Yochanan saw something in this episode in front of him about the Jewish people. The Jewish people are extreme. We live at the extremes. when the Jewish people are succeeding, it's unprecedented, the success the Jewish people have. We rise to the highest levels that the world never sees. And when we fall at the same level of extreme. The Jewish people are an unnatural nation. The Torah compares the Jewish people to the stars and to the dust. Well, make up your mind. Are we like the stars? Are we like the dirt? And the Hachamim say that when the Jewish people succeed, they're high like the stars. There's nobody higher than them. And when the Jewish people fail, they're like the Afara Aris. There's no in-between for the Jewish people. Either it's Kochavim or it's Afar. Either it's Nachimon Ben Gurion, the wealthiest Jew, or it's his daughter that's picking barley corns from the animals of the Arabs. Be'umah shefela behemtam. Rabbi Yochanan saw something in this that is ashrechem. He saw this as a hand of God. If you look at the Lashon of the Gemara, if we're precise, he says, Kish'osim lesono shel makom, nobody is able to touch us. Ubezman she'en osim lesono mosran. What is it mosran? He places us. Who's the he? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rabbi Yochanan saw in this episode a certain modality that the Jewish people have, not like any other nation. That God deals with us in such an unnatural way. Unnatural in our successes and unnatural in our failures. Kochavim and Afar. If I have to give you an example of this, the year Tafshin Pedalet, nobody was able to predict how this year was going to turn out. We suspected it, to be honest with you, when Rosh Hashanah came and we didn't blow the shofar. We all felt it's not going to be a good year. We believe the Gemara that says when there's no shofar, put your seatbelts on. But we've had many years where we didn't blow shofar. But who would have imagined that only a few weeks after the silence of the shofar, that we would experience the lowest events, that the Jewish people were put in the hands of lowlifes, of ummah shefela, of gangs in t-shirts on motorcycles. Arabiyim, the daughter of Nachimon Ben Gurion. It didn't happen to her, it happened to many like her. Picking from the dung of the Behemtam Shel Arabiyim. This is the events that took place on Simchat Torah. I'm sorry to tell you, the generations are descending very quickly. It's not uncommon that even you'll hear rabbis that refer to that day by the secular date, October 7th. Have we not our own calendar? Have we not our own description of that day? That day is called Simchat Torah. In 1973, when we were attacked, we called that Yom Kippur War. You know which day Yom Kippur War was in 1973? October 6th. You know, if anybody here, anybody say October 6th, you didn't even know it existed. It was Yom Kippur. I'm sorry to tell you, 50 years later, we forgot Yom Kippur, we forgot Simchat Torah, we became secularized. It's October 7th. It's a sign of the times. On that day, we saw the Jewish people, Ka'afar Aris. that when the Jewish people fall, it's in an unprecedented way. It's in a historical way. Things that don't happen to any other civilized nation and country. But on that day, if Rabbi Yohanan was around, when all of us were crying, he also would have cried. But he would have said, Ashrechem Yisrael. He would have seen in it an Ashrechem. That when the Jewish people, this is indicative, this is a feature of the Jewish people. This is the way God deals with them. It must be an act of God. It's so abnormal. It's so irregular that you can only explain it as an act of God. You understand? Sometimes when we see such catastrophes, it causes us to say, where is Hashem? But on the contrary, Rabbi Yohanan said, it's so beyond, it must be Hashem. Why does this only happen to us and to nobody else? Why are we always the victims to historical tragedy? Whether it's the Holocaust, whether it's Inquisition, these things are unique to the Jewish people. Rabbi Yohanan saw in that an Ashrechem. That means God is dealing with us. But I want to point out, we cannot forget the events of April 13th either. The events of April 13th, if you check up on Wikipedia, they say that the events of April 13th never happened in world history, ever. What happened was on that day that the Iranians, Shem Nishayim Yirkavu, they sent 170 drones, 30 cruise missiles, and 120 ballistic missiles, all at the same time. Never in history was there an attack of this intensity and this level. Never. In one moment, on one nation. And the miracle of that day, or that night, that Am Yisrael, B'Chazdei Hashem B'Siyata D'Shmaya, was able to bring down 99.9% of those projectiles. Nes Gadol Haya Sham. So you say, Ashrechem, when good things happen to the Jewish people, they break Guinness World Records. And when bad things happen, they break Guinness World Records. The Jewish people are always breaking records of some sort. Whether it's a record of Simchat Torah tragedy, or it's a miracle of April 13th. And I remind you of the events that happened this week, on September 14th and 15th. Again, go on the Wikipedia, and they'll tell you the events of September 14th and 15th have never happened. Not in espionage, not in CIA, not from Scotland Yard, never in warfare. Hezbollah forgot to shut the do not destruct mode on the self-destruct mode on their phones. They said that Nasrallah is going to be the keynote speaker at the Agudat Israel convention this year on the dangers of cell phones and technology. Who knows better than him? The Israelis terminated all those plans very fast. So this is a year where we saw the extremes. We're clearly not out of the woods, but Hashem showed us both sides. He showed us the events of Simchat Torah, where the Jews are picking from the Gilalim of the Arabim, like the daughter of Nakdimon. But he also showed us that when Bnei Yisrael osim resono shel makom, Bnei Yisrael came out, we prayed, and we gave tzedakot, and we learned, and we're doing chesed. And look at the response Borei Olam does. He gives us a little remez. This is what we're capable of doing. This is something that actually is the story of our history. Things that happened to the Jews only happened to the Jews. Something that never happened to another nation. Yes, nations have been exiled from their lands. It happens. But never in the history. You can check it up. A nation that was exiled from their land, did they ever come back? Am Yisrael was sent out of Galut during the times of Babylonia. 70 years later, we came back. It's a Guinness World Record. We were exiled the second time. And already we're witnessing it with our own eyes, the Jews are already starting to come back to Eretz Yisrael. The majority of the Jewish people today live in Eretz Yisrael. That means we were able to survive not one exile, but 2 exiles. And keep in mind that during those exiles, the Jewish people were scattered over 5 continents to 100 different countries. And Am Yisrael is still here. We're an anomaly. It doesn't make sense. The galut that we suffered is unprecedented. And the recovery is just as shocking and just as unparalleled. There are a lot of nations that suffer bigotry. There are a lot of nations that suffer prejudices. We're not the only hated nation. There are a lot of nations around the world that are minorities, and they suffer a certain amount of disdain. But the Jews are the only ones that have a terminology for it. When you hate a Jew, it's not called prejudice or bigotry. When you hate a Jew, it's called anti-Semitism. There's a term for it. There's no other term for any other people that's hated. But when you hate Jews, it's a different type of hatred. It's got its own terminology. Because, again, when Klal Yisrael is down, there's nobody lower. But that's the Ashrechem. It shows that we're different. It shows that we're being dealt with by God on different terms. I'd like to point out, and I have good news for our members here tonight. In the Amidah, we actually say, V'nafshi ka'afar lakol tehiyeh. We say in the prayers at the end of the Amidah that God Almighty, we should be like the afar. We're asking to be like the dust. I don't know how flattering that is. If you went to somebody that said, give me barakah, Yiratzon, you should be like afar. I would say you too, B'ezrat Hashem. V'chen lemor. That's a backhanded compliment. V'nafshi ka'afar, you want to be like afar? Says the Tosafot in the Gemara Berachot. Ma afar en lo kelaya, af bnei Yisrael en lahem kelaya. What is the nature of afar? Everybody tramples on it. You step on it. But guess what? You can never destroy it. The Jewish people are like afar. No matter how much they trample on us, and no matter how much they try to destroy us, we're still here. V'nafshi ka'afar, we have the durability of afar. We have the nitzchiyut of afar. But I'll tell you something else. Over the long haul, the afar always wins. Because everybody always ends up under the afar, and the afar is over them. And therefore we pray, we want to be like afar also. They'll trample us, they'll step on us, but at the end of the day, we're going to be on top. The afar always wins. And we're seeing it. I have a list of the exiles that the Jewish people went through. The different nations. Egyptian Empire, Chaldean Empire, Babylonian, Greek, Roman, Byzantine, Spanish, Ottoman, British, Austro-Hungarian, German, French, Russian, Soviet, Nazi. בכל דור ודור עומדים עלינו לכלותנו. But we're like the Afar. They all don't exist today. And Klal Yisrael has buried all of them. And Klal Yisrael is still here. But the fact that we went through it, Rabbi Yochanan would have said, that's Ashrechem. It's the way the Jewish people are, it's the way we function. It's an atypical way, it's an anomaly, that's for sure. But the fact that it's so strange and so odd, it's a proof that we're being dealt with differently because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is dealing with us. And when we all say this, 20% of the Nobel Prize winners are Jewish. We're not 20% of the population. And I guarantee you that the committee that votes for the winners are anti-Semitic. It probably should be 50%. But factor in anti-Semitism, so it went down to 20%, which is still a super number. That's Kokhavim. And those are the same people that they took our babies, Umashifela, and put them in ovens. Those are the same people that the Arabim, Umashifela, abused and mutilated our people. And Nashim Betav, B'yom Ehad. If that's the case, I understand what Moshe Rabbeinu was doing. When the Jewish people heard these curses, they said, this is something that never happens to any nation. You're telling us things that are beyond belief. Is it possible we are going to descend to such a low place? And Moshe Rabbeinu said, let me tell the other side of the coin. You're the same nation that was in Egypt, and you enjoyed the 10 plagues that also never happened. A sea was split in front of you. You were able to bring down the entire Egyptian empire. You didn't shoot one bullet. You didn't have an army. Also, Wikipedia says never happened before. You lived in the Midbar. Nobody thought you could exist. You existed in luxury in the Midbar. And therefore Moshe Rabbeinu would say, that's Klal Yisrael, Ashrechem. If you stay the course, you'll be able to live a supernatural existence. And the Goyim and the rest of them will scratch their head and say, how are the Jews doing this? That's our story. It's always been our story. But if you're not Oseh Resono Shel Makom, they're also going to say, look at this, Umashifena. Look how low they've sunken. But that system is a proof that we're different. And that's what it means in Alenu L'Shabayach. Shelo asanu kegoyeh ha'aratzot. Most of the other nations of the world, they're flatlined. They don't have supernatural, either way, not positive or negative. They're more or less average, we would call it. But the Jewish people are far from average. Our story is always news. The events that happen to us are always shocking, always novel, extraordinary. And that's what it means. We're not like them. And when a lot of Jews that went through the Holocaust, they said, where was God? I don't judge those people. We weren't there. I can understand it a little because I went to visit concentration camps, and it's so eerie. We could never judge somebody. But if Rabbi Yochanan was there and he saw it, he would say, Ashrechem Yisrael. Ashrechem, this doesn't happen to anybody. That means God is dealing with us in such an extreme way. That's the biggest proof that it has to be coming from a very high source. On the contrary, because it's so unusual, that means somebody in heaven must be doing this. Why does this always happen to us? And then you look at after the Holocaust, what happened? B'nai Yisrael, we regenerated. Everybody thought the Klal Yisrael's over. Everybody thought the yeshivas are over. And all of a sudden, like a phoenix from the ashes, all of a sudden Klal Yisrael rises again. Here, we're in America, we're learning Torah again. Who would have thought? And they're scratching their heads. They said, we thought KO, they were knocked out. Umashifela. All of a sudden, boom, boomerang, they're back up. Shelo asanu kegoyeh haratzot. But now I get to the main point. Now you have a kavanah, shelo asanu kegoyi harasot. Simchat Torah, April 13th. Simchat Torah, September 13th and 14th. And in the middle of that, a helicopter of the president of Iran came down. That's the guy we needed. His helicopter came down. And in the middle of that, Hanaya was sleeping in a fortified military base. And the most safest place in the world. Boom, they got him also. And you look at all these stories, we never saw this before. We never saw this before. It's Klal Yisrael, Yedim Klal Yisrael. You never saw Simchat Torah, and you're never going to see the aftermath either. What does it mean when we say in the Alenu Shabeya, Shelo sam halkenu kahem v'goralenu? V'goralenu. Our lottery is not like their lottery. What are we talking about? Which lottery is this? I'm not aware of a lottery. We have a different ticket, we have a different system. What is this goral? V'goralenu. Let me tell you what the Midrash says. The Midrash says that at a certain point in history, God gave up on the Goyim. It was at the time of the Tower of Babel. God said, you know what? I'm not dealing with these people anymore. I'm going to scatter them up. And at that moment, God created the 70 nations. 35 European, eventually they became, and 35 Arab. 70 nations. And then there's the Jews. As a matter of fact, the Pasuk says in Ha'azinu, Zechor Yemot Olam, remember the days of yore, Be'anhel Elyon Goyim, when God decided to divide the Goyim up, Be'afrido B'nei Adam, when He separated them, Yased Givonot Amim, He established borders for the nations, L'mispar B'nei Yisrael, corresponding the number of the Jewish people. How many Jewish people went down to Egypt? 70. So our 70, which was one nation, God decided to give the Goyim one per. So therefore there were 70. L'mispar B'nei Yisrael. And then the Midrash says a lottery took place in heaven. Borei Olam called 70 angels, and he took the 70 nations and he wrote their names on a petek, and he put it in a lottery, in a goral. And he shook it up, and he told the angels, listen, every country needs a guardian angel, a malach. Put your hand in the lottery and you pick. Whoever you pick, that's your nation. I said, okay, fine. They're about to pick. Borei Olam said, hey, Derech Eretz, what about me? We didn't know that you're in the lottery. Of course I'm in the lottery. God threw in Yisrael. So there's 71 tickets in there. So they shake it up good. Now Borei Olam picks first. Now in the casino business or in American elections, they call that rigged. It was rigged or fixed. The fix was in. Borei Olam knows exactly which ticket he's going to pick, but he goes first. Derech Eretz. So they mix it up. He picks it. B'nai Israel. He says, "Good. I'm in charge of B'nai Israel." Good. I don't have to say for the rest. You go pick it yourself. I don't care. I got the ticket. And the pasuk says, "Ki chelek Adonai amo." The chelek of B'nai Israel is God's chelek. Yaakov Heben Nachalato. Havalim Nafnuli B'Ne'imim. David HaMelech says about God, Havalim is the heaven, is the portion. Nafnuli. God says, it fell to me, but Ne'imim, I got the most pleasant one. It was Ne'imim. I got the Jewish people. Which means, all the nations of the world are being run by an angel, by a custodian. Klal Yisrael is the only nation that is dealt directly with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yishtabach Shemo La'ad. That starts to explain to us, since God is dealing with us directly, why we have this extreme. The angels are limited to certain rules, but God goes lemala min hateva. God goes above the nature. And therefore, whenever you see this type of behavior, that's the proof that God is still managing us. And that's why it's so, the insurance companies, when they see something like this, they say act of God, because it's so beyond. Well, if the insurance companies were underwriting a policy for the Jewish people, they would never pay. Because everything is an act of God by us. It's so beyond the pale. But I must tell you, you shouldn't think that it's automatic that God chooses the Jewish people. You shouldn't think that we have a guarantee that it'll always be like that. After the Jewish people did the golden calf, as a matter of fact, you know the story, the Torah says it. So what did God tell Moshe? I quit, I'm done with these people. I'm sending an angel. I'm out. Why should I deal with these people? I put them on a silver platter, I'm dealing with them directly, white gloves, red carpet. And now they do the egel. Take the malach like everybody else, leave me alone. Moshe Rabbeinu said, no way. If you're not going to be with us, I'm out also, don't take us in. And Moshe Rabbeinu negotiated and got Boreal to come back. But now I'm going to tell you a Hadush. This is a Hadush from the great Rabbi called Shlomo Kluger, alav shalom. In the Sefer Chochmat Shlomo, he says a big Hadush. He says every year on Rosh Hashanah, the angels in heaven come in front of God and they say, we want a new Goral. We want a recount. We want a redo. Why should the Jewish people enjoy to have God as the Chelek? We want to do it again. Maybe we'll get another nation, and maybe another nation will get God. And there's rumbling. Every Rosh Hashanah, he says, this time of year, there's rumbling in heavens that the angels are prosecuting the Jewish people. They don't deserve to be the Chelek of God. They're not doing the Tzorah Shel Makom. We want it to be rescinded. That's what's happening in heaven. Now, I'm going to tell you an interesting story now. The fact, this debate goes on every year in September, which is Elul time, Rosh Hashanah time in heaven. The angels are prosecuting. All the nations of the world are prosecuting the Jewish people. Do over. God should not be the administrator of Israel. And the Zohar Kadosh writes that when something happens in heaven, it creates a ripple effect on earth. And there is no coincidence that every September the 70 nations meet in New York in the United Nations. And they rumble against the Jewish people. And they get up in front of the plenarium and they talk about the Jews and Israel and they make resolutions against them. Why do you think it happens, Davka, in September? What's happening on earth is an indication what's happening in heaven. And therefore, in heaven, that's where it counts. I don't care what they say in the United Nations, the Tower of Babel. What's happening in Shamayim should be concerning to us. It says, a great rabbi called Rabbi Menachem Azariah Mipano, a great Mekubal. He says in Alenu L'Shabbat, we say, Shelo sam chelkenu kahem v'goralenu. Our goral is not like theirs. You know why our fate is not like theirs? Because we're holding a different ticket. You know why the Jewish people, their history is not average? You know why our history is so extraordinary and so supernatural? It's because we have a different ticket. It's God. Did you ever hear of the term, I know you say it on Friday nights, I'm sure, in the Shalom Aleichem. We say Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaSharet, Malachei Elyon. Some communities say Mi Melech, Malchei HaMelachim, because it fits the song better. Actually, Sfaradim, according to the Ben Ish Chai, say Melech Malchei HaMelachim. They don't say Mi Melech. It's a debate. Elu ve'elu, whatever you say, I'm not asking you to change your way. But I want to know, what does it mean? What does it mean, Melech Malchei HaMelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Melech is a king. Malchei HaMelachim, the king of kings. It's a lot of kings. I mean, this we say every day. Melech Malchei HaMelachim. I'll tell you the way some rabbis learn it. Some rabbis learn that we have angels. There are two angels that are considered the king of the angels, that all angels have to report to them. Those are the angels Gabriel and Michael. Gabriel and Michael would be considered Malchei HaMelachim. They are the kings of the angels. So therefore, Melech Malchei HaMelachim, God is the king of the angels. That means God is not only the king of the angels, but even the king of the angels, which is those two super angels, God is the king of them. That's one interpretation. But listen to the way Rabbi Menachem Azariah says, and this is the key. Malchei HaMelachim, those are the angels that administer the kings on earth. Every nation on earth has a guardian angel. And the way we refer to those 70 guardian angels of the nations of the world, they're called Malchei or Malachei. Malchei is short for Malachei. HaMelachim, Melachim is the kings. You have the king of England, you have the king of Russia, you have the king of America, and each one of those nations has a malach. And you know who God is? God is the Melech Malchei HaMelachim. God is the king of all those angels that run the 70 countries, because God controls the Jewish people. And therefore God is on top. Otpam, I say again, Melech, which is God, he is on top of Malchei, the angels that are controlling the Melachim. That's what Rabbi Menachem Azariah says. He's on top of them. That means his control is the strongest control. You cannot expect the control of an angel to be as strong as the control of God. And we're holding that ticket. We're holding the ticket of the Melech of Malchei HaMelachim. And that explains why we're different. And now says the Mefarshim something amazing. On Rosh Hashanah, there's a judgment. Besides the personal judgment that we all have, which Be'ezat Hashem it'll be good. Amen. There's the judgment of the nation. Is God going to pick us again? And we need Him to pick us again. Especially now, before the Mashiach, we need God to finish it. But there's a big fight. Says the Mefarshim, you know when the debate is decided? When the Jewish people say the Aleinu, the Shabeach in Musaf. And you know when it's decided? When the Jewish people say, Va'anachnu mishtachavim lifnei melech Malchei HaMelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The angels are saying, get rid of them. And God says, look, none of you are bowing to me on this day. The Chinese are not celebrating Rosh Hashanah. The Russians, the Syrians, nobody. I should give up the Jewish people? They're the only ones that mishtachavim. They're bowing to me. At that point, when you make the hishtachavaya, when you bow in front of the Melech Malchei HaMelachim, at that point says, I pick the Jewish people again. They're mine for another year. And we're able to activate the winning lottery during that moment. It says to be Menachem. If you take the letters Melech, it's 3 letters. Mem Lamed Chaf. Malcheh, Mem Lamed Chaf Yud, 7. Hamelachim, 6. 13 letters. 13 letters represent the 13 midot of Rahamim. When you say Melech, Malcheh, Hamelachim, you're activating, just by saying those words, the 13 midot of mercy without saying it. And Borei Olam says, 1 more year. 1 more year. They're my nation. And if that's the case, then you can see supernatural things again. Then you'll see some more unprecedented historical Guinness breaking records. Shehem Mishtachavim, you know what they're bowing to? On Rosh Hashanah. Shehem Mishtachavim, the heaven. What is heaven? That's referring to the Arabs. The Arabs pray 5 times a day. That's the hair of heaven. They have 2 holidays. Eid al-Kabir and Eid al-Zghir. The big holiday and the small holiday, that's the Bet. And the Lamed is the 30 days of Ramadan. Shehem Mishtachavim, the heaven. Varik says the Mefarshim, Varik is Gematria Yeshu, which is the Christians. Shehem Mishtachavim Lahebel, Varik. What we read in yesterday's parasha, Etz va'Even. The Christians worship the Etz, which is the cross, the tree, the wood, and the Arabs Even, the rock in Mecca. Etz va'Even. Va'anachnu. And therefore God says, they're all bowing to their deities. No one's bowing to me. And therefore what? I should pick them? At the time of Aleinu, the Shabbayah and the Amidah, it doesn't guarantee that we're going to have a good year. I hope yes. But for sure we win. That means every Rosh Hashanah, at least we know on one of the judgments we come out good. The national judgment, which is important for our nation. That explains a minhag. Halakha says on Rosh Hashanah you're supposed to wear nice clothes, like a shave, cut your nails. You're supposed to have good meat, drink wine. Hedvat Hashem ima'uskem, the Prophet says it's a happy day. A happy day? What's happy? We don't even say Hallel on this day. It's a day of judgment. Explanation is according to Shlomo Kluger. We don't know how our judgment is going to come out personally. I hope it'll be good. But there's one thing we can celebrate already from now. We know that God is not trading us in for another nation. And that alone is worthy to put on a new suit, put on a nice tie, shine your shoes, eat good food and make it a hayim, and eat sweet foods. We are victorious no matter how Rosh Hashanah comes out. We won. Melech, Malcheh, HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if that's the case, Shelo Asanu K'Gresu will be different. We continue to be different. With this, I understand something else. Rosh Hashanah is over, Kippur is over, and now we get to Sukkot. Siman Simchatenu. And I'm asking a question. Isn't it a little premature? I mean, we don't know how we did. I mean, it's wishful thinking. I'm all for positive attitude. But I mean, maybe 6 months later, when you see how the year turned out, then we can decide. Should we make a Simchatenu? Yeah, no. Meaning, Sukkot should be pending until we have a little more data. But no, we don't even wait 4 days, which it's right after Yom Kippur. It's too early to determine how the year is. And boom, Simchatenu, we're drinking, what's the Simcha? If you know what Simchat, if you know what it's all about, on Sukkot, what do we bring in the Beit HaMikdash? Korbanot. On the first 7 days of Sukkot, we bring 70 bulls. On the last day, Shemini Atzeret, that we call Simchat Torah, how many bulls do they bring? One. On Sukkot, we highlight there's the 70 and there's the 1. We don't know how our personal judgment came out, but Zeman Simchatenu, because we know that this didn't change. There's the 70 and there's the 1, and that is reason for simcha. The fact that God chose us again. And how appropriate on that day where there's the 1 Korban, that was the day that we were put in the hands of Ummah Shefela. Simchat Torah, that was the day that we put in Ummah Shefela. But that's the day that you chose us over the 70. Yes, that's the proof that I chose you. The fact that unprecedented things happened to the Jews, that's the biggest proof that I'm dealing with you. And therefore I say, Rabotai, even if you're not willing to change your practice on the daily Aleinu L'Shabeach, maybe I didn't convince you on the daily Aleinu 3 times a day, but please, don't squander the Aleinu L'Shabeach of Tefillat Musaf on Rosh, especially not after the year where we saw the daughter of Nachrimon Ben Gurion 1,000 times over, handed in the Ummah Shefela, in the lowlife's hands. And we also are starting to see now the turn. We're starting to see the miraculous and supernatural and above nature hand of God to protect His people. And therefore we must say with Kavanah, Shelo asanu kegoya rasot. You don't deal with us like you deal with them. You know why? Because they're being dealt with an angel. They goralenu, but our goral is yours. And now we're going to see to it that you re-choose us, that you're going to re-sign the contract. And how do we do that? V'anachnu, not like them. Hevel varik. V'anachnu mishtahavim lifnei melech, the king of all the angels that control the kings of the earth. Melech Malkeh Melachim. And that is a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore we know at least one judgment of Rosh Hashanah will always come out good for us. And if that's the case, I pray, Borei Olam, you chose us. Already we've seen the negative side. We've seen a lot of it throughout the 2,000 years of our exile. We say to the Borei Olam, if you're controlling us and you have we're holding this ticket that says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and you're holding a ticket that says Yisrael, Shiomad Etzerotenu Dai. Already let's start to see the miraculous, not like Afar Haaretz, but like Kochavim. And my prediction is, wait till we get to the Shofar. That's the biggest weapon. It's the only weapon that was missing this year. If you can get to Shofar this year, once you start to hear the Tikiyot and the Shiva, then you're going to start to hear tremendous things in Shamayim. That's the weapon that the Arabs don't have, that the enemies don't, and they knew we didn't have it this year. And therefore they're taking advantage. But once already we start to blast 100 sounds on the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, the Tikiyot are going to be delivered by the angels, the ministering angels in front of God. And then it's going to be Chesed v'Rachamim Malech Kevodo. It's going to be a year of kindness and Chesed. Tafshin Peh B'Ezrat Hashem is going to be the year of our redemption and the year of our salvation. And B'Ezrat Hashem it's going to be largely due to the kavanot that we have during Aleinu L'Shabeach. Thank you very much.